Come on in. Welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're ranking the Survivor 50 cast by threat level. Hatch in All-Stars, Tony in Game Changers, Parvati in Winners at War. Pre-game threat levels have been a defining part of every returnee season's boot order, going all the way back to Survivor's very first returning player season, Survivor All-Stars, where the winners and Rob Cesternino were all but drawing dead heading into the season. Having a big threat level heading into the game doesn't necessarily mean you'll be an early boot, but it does make it more likely, and only really talented and or lucky players are able to escape the massive pre-game bullseye on their backs. And likewise, having a low threat level doesn't necessarily guarantee success in the game, just that people aren't gunning for you when they first step onto the island. So today, I thought I'd do my best to rank the Survivor 50 cast purely by their threat level heading into the game, from the literal who's who are on no one's radar to a handful of players who may have flown into Fiji dead on arrival. As one last note, I will be talking about the two Survivor 49 players who are on Survivor 50 on this video, so if you're one of the brave few trying to avoid knowing who those two players are between now and next spring, please keep that in mind. And also, I wish you the best of luck in your endeavor. You're gonna need it. Finally, like my original Survivor 50 cast assessment, this is going to be mostly unscripted. These are my unscripted, real thoughts. So if you like the more casual hangout vibe here, where we're just doing longer tier lists of players based on random criteria, let me know. There are 24 players to analyze here, so let's get into it. Let's start with the players I would put in the unthreatening tier. These are players who have the lowest threat level heading into the game, and no one is coming for them right out of the gate. The lowest pick for me on the threat totem pole is probably Tiffany Irvin from Survivor 46. Tiffany's the designated WTF pick for Survivor 50. Like, she's not Haley Ford in Game Changers tier, but she's kind of close. If the other players are smart, they'd actually get rid of Tiffany right away, but out of the gate, no one's going to have Tiffany on their mind because she seems a bit out of place on this cast of old Survivor legends and new school players who are really, really talented at the game or big characters. No shade to Tiffany here, but I wouldn't really consider her a huge character, nor was she extremely talented at the game, so I don't think a lot of people are going to have Tiffany on their radar heading into the season. Moving along, our next least threatening player for me is Jonathan Young from Survivor 42. This is a guy who I don't think anyone is coming for out of the gate. Like, why on earth would you target the guy who is literally going to carry you on his back to the merge? Jonathan was known for being loyal, he was known for being physical, and he didn't have a ton of win equity at the end of the game. This is like the perfect Survivor ally. This is the guy I would attach myself to the hip to, and as we all know, everyone should always do everything I say in Survivor. I'm never wrong. Down the line, Jonathan's target will definitely start to crystallize, especially if he makes the merge, but heading into the season, I definitely see more players wanting to work with Jonathan than work against him. The next player in the unthreatening tier is Jenna LewisDohy from Survivor Borneo OG Original Season 1. I was torn between Jenna and the next player we're going to see for the old schooler with the lowest threat level, but for me, I do think it's Jenna, which is great for her. She was the token Pagong representative on Survivor All-Stars. She's the token Season 1 player here in Survivor 50. I think a lot of people are just going to look at Jenna as some like rusty, over-the-hill Survivor player and write her off completely. Jenna's never even played with an immunity idol, but that is going to be a huge mistake. As we saw in All-Stars, Jenna is very talented at the game and very adaptable as well. So even though she was on Season 1, she's not going to be like the rusty old player that a lot of people are going to think she is coming into the season. So like Tiffany, I think Jenna is going to be someone who's written off by a lot of the players, but is definitely someone they should be watching out for because Jenna could be a very dangerous player in Survivor 50. The next player in the unthreatening tier is Chrissy Hoffbeck from Survivor Heroes versus Healers versus Hustlers. They should be afraid of her, but they won't be. She's strategic. She was an immunity beast. But Chrissy was on an underseen season that doesn't really have a very good reputation, and mostly what people remember about her is not the 4 immunity wins or the like constant scheming and strategizing, but it's just that she got kind of screwed by Final Four fire making at the end and didn't win. So Chrissy has a lot going for her coming into the season. There are bigger schemers out here. There are more overtly threatening physical players. So Chrissy is very well insulated by that fact. The next and final player in the unthreatening tier is Colby Donaldson. Respectfully, Colby was Superman in a fat suit on Heroes vs. Villains. You know, he just limped along to the end, and gone are the days of the charming cowboy immunity beast of Survivor Australia. Colby's always been the type of player who's there more for the adventure than the scheming. And New Era Survivor is a lot of scheming, there's a lot of strategy, and everyone knows that Colby is going to be out of his element. Colby is, again, one of those players who I think more people are either going to want to work with than work against, or honestly, he might just not be fitting into a ton of plans of anyone in the game. So Colby's just no longer the young stud he once was, and gone are the days of Survivor All-Stars where Colby's head was one of the trophies everyone wanted on the mantelpiece. Let's move on to the average tier. These are players with a pretty average to middling threat level. And the first player on the average tier is Angelina Keely. Angelina is the personality hire of Survivor 50. Like, people know Angelina's schemy, she's petty, she might come against you, but I don't think anyone's really afraid of Angelina. Like, she's definitely more of a meme player than one who will be taken seriously, at least at the start of the game. Now, the thing Angelina has going against her is Christian and Mike. Having 3 people from David vs. Goliath puts them all at risk. Any original season that has more than one representative, at least one of those players is going home early, because it's just too threatening to have 3 of these people who all have an outside connection get deep into the game together. Will Angelina be the one who's going home early out of that trio? Probably not. Plus, she's going to get that rice for the tribe, so keep her around at least till then. The next player in the average tier is Emily Flippin from Survivor 45. I had the most difficulty placing Emily out of any player in this cast. I do think her closeness with Dee puts her in danger, but otherwise, if Dee wasn't here, I would have Emily down in the unthreatening tier. I just don't think that Emily has the baggage that a lot of the other quote-unquote strategists have. Like, Dee won, Camila was really close with Kyle, Charlie almost won. All of these players have like that thing that they're known for of like the headline. All those other players have like that headline, you know? And what is Emily's? Like, she voted out Bruce and then bragged about it. Ooh, that's so scary. You voted out Bruce. Wow. And I don't mean that like in a mean way against Emily. I mean that as like, that is, you know, if someone tries to bring that up on the island, who cares? It's Bruce. Now, I do think there might be some new era players who have seen firsthand how difficult it is to get out of these failed tribes like Lulu and could view Emily as a threat because of that. But overall, I don't think a ton of players are going to be coming out of the gate hot against Emily. The next player in the average tier is Coach Wade, originally from Survivor Token Jeans. Real ones will remember that Coach was extremely strategic in South Pacific. He ran that season. He manipulated Brandon using religion. Like, nothing was off limits for Coach. But it has been a long time since Survivor South Pacific, and no one cares about that season in 2025. So the coach that's going to be remembered on this season is Kooky Coach from Token Sheens, who went to exile and told his silly stories around the campfire. And that is great for Coach. You know, there could be some lingering resentment from Aussie over Coach's betrayal of him at the end of South Pacific, or maybe some resentment from Colby since Coach completely made a fool of him in the opening challenge, but come on, these things were like 15 years ago. I think Coach is going to come in and play to his strengths, which is the silly, kooky guy, and I don't think a ton of people are going to have Coach as their #1 pick to get out early. Let's move on to Coach's South Pacific co-captain, Aussie Lust, who originally played in Survivor Cook Islands. Aussie's another one where who's afraid of Aussie? Like, we all know the Aussie playbook. He has not a ton of strategic game. He's going to come there, he's going to fish, he's going to get you coconuts, he's going to go out early in the merge. Who is scared of Aussie beyond his potential individual immunity performances? He's just such an easy person to later on down the line just point the finger at and say, we got to get him out because he's great at immunity challenges. So down the line, I could see Aussie's threat level, perking up, but early in the game, no one's going to be going for Aussie. And I think most of the players are going to have the opinion of Aussie of like, yeah, catch me fish, get me coconuts, and I will cut you later. Let's move on to another old schooler, Stephanie LaGrossa Kendrick, who originally played in Survivor Palau. Stephanie has two things going for her. One, that no one has seen or cared or talked about Survivor Guatemala since it aired. And number two, her bad showing in Heroes vs. Villains, which will help her so much, because that makes her most memorable performance Survivor Palau, where she was a very heroic, resilient player, but not one who was really scheming or strategic. The only person I really could see targeting Stephanie early on is maybe Sari. They were on opposite sides in Heroes vs. Villains, and there could be some bad blood there. Stephanie was also completely used and humiliated by Sari on the Traitors, so that should be factored in as well. But overall, I don't think a lot of people are looking at Stephanie as a huge threat. The version of her they're going to remember is a very rosy version of Stephanie, and the scheming and strategy of Guatemala is not going to be on anyone's mind out here. The next player in the average tier is Aubrey Bracco from Survivor Korong. Aubrey was once considered one of the most threatening players on Survivor Game Changers, a cast with Tony and Sandra and JT. But now, after 2 weak performances in Game Changers and Edge of Extinction, Aubrey's target has very much softened. I know people want to bring up the Q thing, where he used Mariah's fandom of and vague physical resemblance to Aubrey as a way to target her, but I don't know. I think that was just Q throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what stuck. I don't know. I could be wrong on Aubrey. Maybe there are a lot of players who are scared of the Cochrane archetype, but I think after two fairly middling performances, getting out Aubrey is just not top of mind for anyone anymore. The final player in the average threat level tier, and a person who I almost bumped up to the next one, is Genevieve Mushaluk from Survivor 47. I really waffled on putting her here or the next tier, but I think the thing Genevieve has going for her is that there's no other 47 representation on this season, and I think if people are looking to get out new era players, there are other strategists who are more overtly threatening, and there are other players who are playing with people that they know from their seasons, where Genevieve is not. So I think Genevieve is generally in a pretty good spot. It also helps that she spent most of the Survivor 47 post-merge playing defense. She wasn't like in control and some big strategic overdog like D. So generally speaking, I think Genevieve will do pretty well, and I don't see a ton of people wanting to get Genevieve out right away. Let's move on to the You're in Danger tier. These are players who are in trouble but could get out of it. First player on this list is Q Burdett from Survivor 46. Like Emily, Q was a player I struggled to place, but I think the thing that could put him on people's radar early is just how unpredictable he is. Everyone here who has seen his season knows he can blow up. He can blow up at any time. He can blow up his game. He can blow up your game, even if you're allied with him. So Q is a very mercurial player, and if people are wanting to eliminate the unknowns, then the chaos, then Q is someone who's going to be out of the game very early. The rest of the players in this tier will be here because they're, big social threats, big strategic threats, but Q is here because he is just a huge question mark and you never know which way he's going to go. The next player in this tier is Christian Hubicki from Survivor David vs. Goliath. He's just too likable, guys. People are going to want Christian out because they know what a huge social threat he is. He's extremely easy to get along with. He can talk to anyone about anything, it seems like. Now, that is a plus in the game, but going into it, I think people know if you give Christian a social inch, he will take a mile and do a breadth-first search right into your heart. Like I said earlier, having Angelina and Mike on this season is also very bad for Christian. It's good for us as viewers, but it's bad for Christian because people know that he's friends with Angelina and Mike. Mike just put him in a cameo in the White Lotus. So I do think Christian will be able to squeak out of this, but I expect him to be one of the names that people are throwing out earlier on as a anybody but me choice. The next player in this tier is Charlie Davis from Survivor 46. He's a super fan. He's a strategist. He looks like a super fan and a strategist. And all of that, and he's got the Charlie should have won baggage from Survivor 46. Charlie is in a lot of danger early on, but I also kind of think he's going to be good at getting out of that. He does seem very likable and easy to talk to. And if Charlie just lays low early on, I think he'll be good. But I do think a lot of the players, especially maybe the old school players, are going to want to get out these like new era super fans as quickly as possible. And Charlie exemplifies that. So Charlie needs to watch out for knives in his back from the jump and not just from Maria. The next player in this tier is Joe Hunter from Survivor 48. Joe has a lower target than Camila and Kyle for me just because he's Mr. Loyalty, but the 48ers are going to be in a lot of trouble. I would not be shocked if all three of them are pre-mergers, but I have the most faith in Joe to make a deep run. If we were having this conversation a year or 2 or 3 from now and Survivor 48 was a distant, bad memory, Joe would be not this high at all. He would be way lower because people know with Joe, you're going to get big, strong, and he will ride or die with you to the end. Or at least that's the perception people have of him. But this cast just saw this season. They just saw Kyle and Camila and Joe all go very deep, and they're not going to make the same mistake that the cast of Survivor 48 did. The next player in this tier is Joe's 48 castmate, Camila Carthagesu. Again, like Joe, if she returned later without Kyle years down the line, she'd be very unthreatening. She would be at the very bottom of my threat tier list, and she'd be someone I would bet on to win, depending on the cast. But coming out of 48, where this cast just saw her go very deep, and just saw her repeatedly talk about how much she loves screwing over people strategically, and how excited she was to make moves and end people's dreams, yeah, Camila is in a lot of trouble early on, and I think she's also someone that people can just throw under the bus with ease. So Camila's threat level here is really defined by her circumstance of being on the most recent season the cast saw, and having her closest ally here with her. Finally, our last player in the You're in Danger tier is Rick Devens from Survivor Edge of Extinction. Idol Hunter, Immunity Beast, one fire-making challenge away from what would likely be a unanimous win at the end of the game. Rick is in a lot of trouble going into Survivor 50. Rick's just got this problem where he had so much momentum in the post-merge part of Edge of Extinction. He was always hunting for idols. If he didn't have an idol, he won a clutch immunity. So he just has a reputation as someone you can't get rid of. And that is just such a problem for Rick coming into this season. I wish he wasn't, because I really like the guy and I would actually love to see a deep Rick run, but I think he is in a lot of trouble. Let's move on to our last tier, the cooked tier. These are the Tina and Ethan and Hatch tier in All Stars. These are players who are already buried 6 feet deep, and they're going to have to climb hard to get out of the grave. Our first players on this list are the Survivor 49 players, Savannah Louie and Rizzo Volovic, aka the Riz God. Their problem is they are just question marks. They're complete unknowns. The other players have not seen how they play, and there are 2 of them. I think with a lot of the old school players, the ghost of Russell Hantz is going to be haunting them. Russell came into Heroes vs. Villains with the cast having not seen Samoa, and look what happened. So people like Coach and Stephanie and Colby might want to get these question marks out of the way because it burned them last time. Now, the thing they have going for him, Riz God is not exactly Russell Hantz. He has a softer aura, I'd say. But still, in a game with stakes like this, having an unknown quantity is just so dangerous, and I could see a lot of players coming for them just based on that. The next player in this tier is Mike White from Survivor David vs. Goliath. I've got 2 words for Mike White.
Good luck.
There are 3 David vs. Goliath players, and a lot of fans have reevaluated his game in David vs. Goliath in recent years and determined this guy was great. He had an absurd amount of control the entire post-merge, and he should have won. Now, the thing Mike has going for him that could soften his threat level is he is actually really rich, and Mike should play up that angle. Jimmy Johnson tried it in Nicaragua. I'm really wealthy. No one's going to vote to give me $1 million. Just keep me around. But overall, straight out of the gate, I think a lot of these players are going to be gunning for Mike White. I hope he can get out of it. Outside of one other person on this tier, I do have the most faith in Mike that he can outrun his reputation, but I do think a lot of people on this cast are going to want to send him back to the White Lotus sooner than later. The next player in this tier is Kyle Frasier, the winner of Survivor 48. If he were playing later in a New Era All-Stars or something, I think he would be one of the better performing winners, but we just saw this guy win. His two closest allies are out here. Who is letting Kyle get deep into the game? People are going to want him out so fast. Having him and D as the only two known winners, maybe one of the Survivor 49ers won, but having them as the only two known winners is just so terrible for them. And it's just going to be a rough time for Kyle. And I don't really see Kyle being able to escape that either. The next player in this tier is Dee Viadarez, the winner of Survivor 45. Like I said with Kyle, winners are going to have huge targets. Dee was so threatening and cutthroat on her season. And now, the cat's out of the bag on Dee's strategic game. I'm more confident in her game abilities than a lot of the other people in this tier list to actually make connections and make a deep run. But I do think Dee is the second biggest threat in the game coming into it, and most of the people are going to want to get her out ASAP. Our last player in the cooked tier, a player who I actually don't think is cooked at all, Sigret Fields, who originally played on Survivor Exile Island. Sigret has played Survivor 4 times. She's played like every other reality show, and she is always great. Her reputation precedes her. That's bad if you're trying to perform well in Survivor 50. Like, look at all of the old school legends on Winners at War. Boston Rob and Parvati, sure, they were in a good spot in their original tribes, but then they got swapped and they just could not outrun their reputations. Everyone here knows Sigret is extremely likable, extremely capable strategically, and like half of them have played the game with her, and the other half have grown up idolizing her. So everyone knows Sigret's game, they know what she's capable of, and they know that she is the scariest player in this game. All right, I've put it all together, and here is my tier list of the Survivor 50 players purely ranked by their threat level heading into the game. Again, not an indication of placement by any means, just my best guess for who had the biggest and smallest pre-game targets before the season began. Got nothing else for ya. Who do you think has the biggest target on their back in Survivor 50? Can they escape it? What did you think of my ranking? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, don't get idled out.